there. After 9 a.m., we've run into a couple problems where people still, multiple people come into the park and just let them loose by the pond, and the dogs run loose. So we've instituted a warning system, actually. It's a written warning policy where we spoke about this. We write a warning, an actual warning to the individual. We take their name, their address, and we give them a copy. We keep a copy for our records. And the policy that we're working on right now is after a few warnings, or maybe one warning, they won't be allowed to come back into the park with that dog. The person can come back in, but without the dog.
Or the dog without the person.
The dog, yeah. Right.
I'm confused because this commission allowed dogs on the beach last summer off leash.
Winter.
Winter.
Yeah, we have no dogs on the leash at all now.
Well, right, but there's been a history of
Although I think the problem we have is the following. We've been very dog friendly. So what happens, we attract a lot of dog owners. And as always, 10% of the bad apples, right, ruin it for everybody else because you got a few idiots that at 9:30, engage our staff.
But there are many of them.
I'd like to make a suggestion that we maintain the policy as is. For the time being, but that we revisit how we deputize, how we deal with the summonses we're going to be dealing out with, and I guess Mayor French will wait to hear back from you next meeting, and we'll keep.
We're having a public hearing on the 25th for us to change our code in the city of Rye that would allow for the commission's policy. So if we're going to change the policy, we need to decide tonight. So we're voting to enforce, even if it's existing now with just the Rye City PD writing violations as is now. If you want us to go into the season and enforce that policy, I can hold the public hearing open, but we don't meet again until June 15th, and then you're into the season.
Well, let me ask another question then. If the public hearing is closed and it's voted on and the way it's presented, does this commission have the ability to alter its policy?
Sure.
Then would that force the city to change it again then, right? It's going to be a...
I tell you what, I quite frankly, look,
we have our ducks in a row here.
We've worked very hard to work with the dog owners, and the dog owners have been very, very constructively engaged with us, I think. I think, Mayor French, if you could keep your public hearing open, keep it open. And then, because I also want to hear from the public, right? Let's see what, the whole idea is to translate public will. So I think we're agreed we'll leave our policy as is. And the policy is dogs are allowed to be off a leash till 9 a.m.
In designated areas.
In designated areas. Well, I don't think that's the. I think we're accused of having too many signs.
We are handing out the flyers.
Sorry, would you just come on up?
We've been handing out the policy itself to a lot of the dog owners. Of course, we haven't gotten every dog owner, but a lot. The policy states what we expect of them. From until 9 o'clock, the dogs can be off leash. But we've also
a designated area.
We've also been verbally going from dog owner to dog owner and actually tell them that until 9 o'clock it's okay, but after 9 o'clock it's not. So we've only issued a few. I think it was 7 warnings so far, and we've seen numerous more, but they haven't been the same person. When we see one person over, we'll issue the warning.
May I quickly ask?
Sorry, can I just? No, I wanted to understand you. Could you just come up, and I want to better understand your concern.
Well, it was our understanding that this was going to come to resolution, and it appears that that's not the case. The concern, as a park visitor, is: are the dogs being restricted to those areas of the park that were outlined in what's going to eventually be published, hopefully, which is along the perimeter walls,
in the north end,
along Forest Avenue and Rye Beach Avenue, away from the duck pond, away from the Great Lawn.
I got to say, quite frankly, my view on this is changing, and it's just, I think you're right. At the end of the day, it's just too complicated. In the summertime, my view is keep the damn dogs on a leash. I love dogs and stuff like that, but I think, maybe in the summertime with the traffic in the park, we ought to maybe just
And
bite the
Mr.
bullet right
Supervisor,
now
I
and
think
say,
the
no,
issue
no
of
parks off
liability,
the leash.
I'm just saying.
which Mr. Noto has sensitized us to, should not be overlooked or minimized. You know, and like a lot of places, what they do, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, ma'am, but they have like penned areas, right? Because we could sit there and say we have a designated area, but like the dog doesn't speak English. So when he goes beyond the area and we didn't implement the reasonable control, you know, Mr. Turner, are we like on the hook? Maybe yes.
Absolutely.
No, and
You
while I
know,
think it's great to have these dog run areas, I think
know
we
what?
have to make a reasonable effort to
I think,
bound
you
it.
know, I think, well, look, unless the park staff thinks there's or the commission has a, you know, I think in the summertime, we just, you ought to, you know, from Memorial Day to whatever, September, keep the dogs on a leash throughout the summer, and then we can revisit the issue again in the fall.
It's been a past practice, right? Has there ever been a dog injury?
It's always, you know, Dennis,
resulting from
it's
an
always
off-leash
been,
condition?
quite frankly,
There have, right?
it's always been
It's just
fairly
confusing.
confused.
I mean,
Yeah.
whatever the policy ends up being, it just needs to be consistent and well-publicized so that those people who are committed to the enforcement of it understand it, and that certainly the public at large understands it, so that we know that the dogs will be in a certain area of the park, so if you have a young child, you don't go to that area of the park. You go to another area of the park to take your walk. Or if you're a senior and you don't want to be accosted by a dog, you go sit on a bench closer to the beach, that kind of thing. I just think that, I don't know, it just seems so up in the air still. It's just like throw the papers in the
Okay,
air and see what
I
happens.
unfortunately, I have to get going in about 1 minute. So, Commissioner Salanicho, what's your
The only
recommendation?
concern I have is that since this body has already acted in the form of a vote, and it's publicized and so forth, you either have to rescind your prior policy, or we have to continue with it until further notice.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So we want to rescind, or you want to continue?
I wasn't here for the 26th, so I didn't get the full, didn't get the full breadth of the discussion.
Now I'm getting confused because we were handing out documents last year that said off leash after 9 a.m. they had to be on leash, and that was very confusing. We have a past practice. If you've been to the park early in the morning, it is well controlled. I think this now just puts clarity around our policy of what our past practice has been. I'm not in favor of going back to no dogs at all. I just think, you know, just like Central Park, there's a real need for socialization of dogs and recreational activity with the community. It's been well received. I think we just need to clarify the time of day.
Mayor Pilla, you want to rescind, or you want to maintain?
You know, I wasn't here for the 26th.
Well, I forget
either,
the
unless
20.
although I don't remember what I had
You
for
and
breakfast.
Commissioner Salanicho.
And I'm not offering that as a thing. It's sort of like a mixed risk here. I mean, I'm hearing
Sure.
it's a past practice is well controlled, but I'm hearing people saying people are getting injured.
Yep, Mayor Feinstein.
It was very clear that the law has always been that you can't be off-leash. I mean, that's what it is right now, as far as the city of Ryan. I think we knew that. But as Commissioner Salanicho said, we all knew for the last 2 years that there was a practice, and we just codified that practice. I would think that there's so much uncertainty to go back and forth. I think that what we should do is keep the practice, at least for this season, and to monitor it. And I think that's been the problem. There hasn't been, I think there has been monitoring, but stepped up in more communication. And I think, and I understand there's a liability. There's also a liability if we have a practice, you know, that we just turn our back to, et cetera.
Perfect,
But
okay.
I think that that's my feeling.
Yep.
And I think that we really then have to get the, I think also, if we have it and the policy is distributed, I think the dog owners will take it to heart more to know the fact that, as far as I'm concerned, this policy is a test case, that we're just doing this on a pilot program and see how it goes this particular summer in its codified version.
Perfect. So I'm going to summarize. I think that's very,
Actually-
Mr. Pilla, I'm going to.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but you know, the one troublesome thought. And I'm sorry, I really apologize, but it really depends on the enforcement mechanism, right?
Well, right.
We have
so,
no way to
so,
enforce
so,
this,
but
and that really,
there's
I
two
think
different,
about
there's
what's
two,
going on
right.
here.
So,
Yeah.
so
Sorry to jump in.
sure. So I think I'm going to summarize. We've had an informal policy over the last several years, effectively, to have the dogs off the leash until 9 a.m. We codified that policy at the last meeting. I take the comments. It makes no sense to reverse our codification of last week. We're going to charge Mayor French with suggesting an enforcement.
Well, we're only going to enforce if we change the Rye City Code. And if we don't change the Rye City Code, we're not going to work through enforcement mechanisms.
Right. So then we'll have to revisit where we are. So
Well, and we're going to table it. I'm going to take it off the agenda for May 25th. I mean, if we're not going to make this a policy, why are we going to now change the
Well,
enforcement?
Oh, no, I think, so the point is, we're not going to change the policy.
Okay.
So dogs can all be off the leash till 9 a.m.,
Okay.
awaiting pending the public hearing. And if the citizens of the Rye City want to support this policy, then the Rye City Police are going to have to help us enforce that policy. And so we're looking to you to come back and tell us whether you want either code enforcement officers or deputize some of our people, and whether the Rye City courts want to take it or they want to refer it to Rye Town courts.
Okay, our public hearing is the 25th. When's the next commission meeting?
Third week.
The 21st.
Okay.
1st of June.
And then
Beautiful.
we have a June 15th.
I'm going
meeting,
to, I have to leave. I don't know if there's other business. I can turn it over to Mayor French. The meeting is adjourned. Mr. Vitti, I know you wanted to speak.
Mr. Vitti again. I went to see Bishop the other day and asked him to get me back on the job again. I walked up 3 flights of stairs and I was panting. He says, I can't hire you. Look at the way you're panting and you're sitting down. I don't want you to drop dead on my watch. That's exactly what it said. I'm probably in better shape than the 2 guys that are working presently. As far as the cops, retired cops, to get the jobs done, look at the records of the last 5 cops you had down. One was an alcoholic, one was on drugs, and now the new cop wants us to fight, fist fight with people. Now, that's absurd. I've been there since 2001, never had a fracas down there. We called the cops maybe once because some kid stole his uncle's car. But as far as the crassness of this guy here, he is a crass man. Now, Joe, if you're going to run again, you better get him off the ticket because he's going to ruin you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vitti.
As far as the dogs, I know the people of Rye are smart, but the dog, the 9 o'clock, is laughable. That dog that came on the beach and I got fired for was after 8:30. The dogs are smart, but they don't bite before 9 o'clock.
Maybe they do speak English.
Joe, on their old business, do we have use policy? Is somebody working on the use policy of the park in terms of users? And if we're going to charge a fee, et cetera, didn't we have some thought about that?
Yeah, for
Use,
not-for-profit.
yeah, for
Not-for-profit.
Yeah, we don't have that. We're still developing
policy?
that policy. Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
we'll work on
Developing
that.
that.
Okay.
Beautiful. Can I get a motion to bring the meeting to a close?
So move.
Motion,
Second?
second.
Excellent.
Okay.
Mr. Watnick, thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Good night.